If I didn't like CNN here, I love it, and I love it very much. My name is Lee from Enugu State. Political voices always keeping me busy, always making me happy as I'm on strike as a student.
Political voices, one story, many angles.
Listen, I am telling you that
I don't agree. I don't.
Yeah, who the
No. You can't say that.
Politics. Where is good governance?
Everyone is a political animal.
I don't like politics.
But I love political voices.
On Political Voices, we talk politics. In a country of diverse interests, who gets what, when, and how is politics. And this is our business on Political Voices. Nigeria, a country of over 160 million people. Political Voices is gauging the temperature, setting the agenda. Political Voices exclusively on Dream FM, 9 o'clock in the morning, Monday to Friday.
Good morning and welcome to Political Voices on 92.5 Enugu's Dream FM. Political Voices is a session of comments, interviews and analyses of trending political stories as they affect and shape the world around you. Today is Thursday. It is the 6th day of August 2020. And this morning, our focus turns to Enugu State's 2020 revised budget. We look at the prospects. But before we get to that, there are matters arising from the political space. An elder statesman and co-founder of the Arawa Consultative Forum, Alhaji Tanko Yakasai, on Wednesday in Kano, reiterated his earlier call for a return to the parliamentary system of government, insisting that it would end the lingering allegations of marginalization by some parts of the country. Besides, Yakasai, while commenting on a viable political option, also called for zoning of political power, even as he emphasized that zoning and prioritization would take care of the aspirations of different groups in the country. According to him, once power goes round, at least once or twice, the different groups will be reassured that someday they will get hold of the opportunity to produce the next president of the country. Moving ahead, the independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) on Wednesday expressed concerns over what it described as ugly reports of violence coming from politicians in Edo State ahead of the governorship elections scheduled for September 19th. The commission said it would summon the campaign council of political parties and candidates participating in the election over the threat of violence. The INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, said this during an on-the-spot assessment of its preparedness for the August 8 by-election in Nasarawa State on Wednesday. The commission also said it was set for the by-election. Finally, total loans by the Chinese government and the affiliate agencies to Nigeria is about $3.121 billion and constitutes only about 3.94% of Nigeria's total public debt of 79.3 billion naira as of March 31st, the Debt Management Office DMO has said. Also, in terms of external sources of funds, Chinese loans account for about 11.28% of the country's external debt stock of $27.67 billion by the same date. The DMO has also said that the clarification was necessary to show that China is not a major source of funding for the Nigerian government, contrary to recent reports by certain persons, including members of the National Assembly, that Nigeria has mortgaged its sovereignty to China through loans. Those are some of the stories making the headlines in the political space this morning. And remember, we are live on 3 social media platforms. On YouTube, please go to our YouTube channel, Dream TV Enugu, and subscribe and turn on notification to get the amazing videos. On Facebook, it's 925 Dream FM. And on Twitter, it's Dream 925 FM. You can send us a WhatsApp message on 0902 0020 925. Stay with us. This is Political Voices on 92.5 Enugu's Dream FM. This morning, our focus is on the Enugu State's revised budget 2020. And we are joined this morning on the program by Dr. David Ogunta. He is the Commissioner for Budget and Planning, Enugu State. Good morning to you, sir. Good to have you on Political Voices.
Good morning. Thank you.
Also here in the studio is Engineer Mike Ubuekwe. He is the Special Advisor to the Governor of Enugu State on Agriculture. You're welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, and I'm glad you had me here.
All right. I'll start with you, Dr. David Ogunta. You are the Commissioner for Budget and Planning in Enugu State. Talk us through behind the figures and some of the major line items of this revised budget for 2020 and why it had to be revised and at this time.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning once again, listeners. Of course, the year 2020 started on a good note with high hopes, and somewhere along the line, we woke up to the issue of coronavirus, which changed the way we do things, the way we see things, the way we interact, everything. Most importantly, it affected or threatened the sources of revenue to the government, not just the Enugu State government, but the entire government across the globe. And then there was this need to look at the projections in the 2020 and see whether these projections will still be met given the current situation occasioned by the COVID-19. So with that, there was this need to revise the budget. Of course, the original budget was predicated on benchmarks such as oil price, which was benchmarked at $57 per barrel, and then oil output, which was benchmarked at 2.18 million barrels per day, and then the exchange rate benchmarked at $305 to Naira. So because of the COVID-19, there was sharp drop in oil prices, there was drop in oil production, the exchange rate gone up, and in revising the budget, we needed to look at these projections or these benchmarks again. And then we assumed, given what happened between March to May and then June, we now say, okay, we can safely assume an oil price benchmark of $25 per barrel. And then we also can assume, or federal government now came up and say that the official exchange rate will now be $360 Naira per dollar. And then it was also estimated that the oil production per day would drop to 1.8 million barrels per day. So with these projections, it's so clear that there will be drop in revenue. Of course, you know how Nigeria is, aside from the internally generated revenue, which the state government is doing so well. There's also these receipts from the federal allocation. We talk about the FAC receipts, we talk about VAT. So this occasion of COVID-19 threatened these sources of revenue, and then we now went into the exercise, okay? And in looking at the revision of the budget, we now have to say, okay, COVID-19 has come. Nobody saw it coming. There were things we already had in the budget, targets to be achieved in 2020. But COVID-19 came, changed a whole lot of things. And then we now have to reprioritize our focus to be able to tackle the pandemic and also sustain the economy and be able to, wriggle out of the quagmire, being presented by COVID-19. And we went into the revision. At the end of the day, we were able to drop the budget by 13.67% from a total budget of 169.5 billion naira approved down to 146 billion, 146.3 billion naira. Okay. Now, in doing this, we had to save fund, cut down expenses, now bring in new items which will help us, fight the pandemic and then reposition the state, to be able to face the.
So what are the priority areas of this revised budget? Since you had to forego some things, so what are those areas that the government is focusing on majorly at this period?
Well, first of all, you need to be alive in order to talk about other things. So the state government took it upon itself. In fact, the governor himself, Right Honorable Ifeanyi Ugwuanyi, now had to visit various hospitals. You can see what is going on at the former Colliery Hospital, now named the Enugu State Infectious Disease Hospital. Massive reconstruction and rehabilitation going on there. And then government also responded by going into the primary healthcare development. And then, as we speak, renovations and new constructions of what we call type 3 model healthcare, primary healthcare centers. The governor also visited some general hospitals in the states, such as that of Enugu, that of Uji, that in Enugu. And all these things have now been brought in. They were not in the budget before, but all these things now have to be brought into the budget so as to be able to, not overburden the secondary, tertiary healthcare systems. Start from primary and then come over to secondary and make sure that, yes, the state is quite positioned to tackle any challenge that may come out of it. And then in also trying to reconstruct the general hospitals, government also thought it wise to provide what we may call isolation wards, isolation centers in those general hospitals, so that we can holistically, tackle the pandemic. Aside that, government also made sure that, yes, our frontline healthcare workers had to be taken care of, because initially people were scared. If you see the numbers coming out from the developed climes, everybody was scared, even the doctors and every other person. So there has to be a boost in terms of hazard allowances and other allowances. So health was now became the priority. And then area of agriculture also came in, that we need to provide food or ensure food security in that area. Of course, my brother here will also throw more light in the area of agriculture. Then works and infrastructure, was not left out, because if you want to grow the economy, it has to come from the capital investments. So the massive constructions of roads in the rural areas, the RAM project is there, and some other rural roads, which government intends to build so that food can be evacuated from the rural areas down to the urban centers, so that people in the rural areas who are able to produce food, that it doesn't waste, and everything produced is kind of consumed or taken to areas where they are needed. Okay, then education also became a priority. Of course, our school radio program is ongoing now, since students and pupils are out of school. Government has to introduce the school radio program to make sure that while students and pupils are out of school, the teaching and learning continues to go on. Okay, and then in the education sector, you also see massive construction and reconstruction of both secondary and primary schools, ongoing. And then the area of SME also came into play. The SPA on SME, we are still expecting that he will join us, because SME, you need to provide not just You need to create the enabling environment for people to be able, especially the youths, to learn skills, engage themselves. And today we are talking about what we call studentpreneur. It's a loan program. We are also talking about the human development capital loan. All these things are channeled towards building capacity for young people, so that people can fend for themselves. And then, of course, the government also went into distributing palliatives, to cushion the effect of the COVID-19. So, in revising the budget, I would say it is holistic. You talk about health, you talk about agriculture to make sure there's food, you talk about education, you talk about development, and then you talk about works and infrastructure. These are the areas we now reprioritize.
All right. Okay then. Thank you so much, Dr. David Ogunta. Engineer Mike Obuokwe, you are the special advisor to the governor of Enugu State on agriculture, and we've looked around. There seemed to be almost an unending process of distributing palliatives, and a lot of people argue that it is coming from somewhere. What is the program of the Enugu State government at this time? Did they also rejig the agricultural policy in line with the COVID-19 pandemic? Talk to us about what is going on in this subsector.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you, listeners, for staying tuned. Just like my colleague here said, agriculture is a priority as we speak by the administration of His Excellency Right Honorable Ifeanyi Ugwuanyi. And as a matter of fact, like you mentioned, palliatives keep coming, and you're asking where is it coming from. So the governor created a brand called the Coal City Rice, in which he was able to pull all the rice cultivated in Enugu State together, and under a brand, standardize it, make sure it's destoned, so that our people can receive food items. So palliatives were essentially generated from within the state to be given to the people that need palliatives. So the rejig of the agriculture sector means that we are having increase in production, in food production in the state. The budget, as we speak, the government is building a new cattle ranch so that we can be self-sufficient in production of beef, which is protein for the people. The government also has the meat industry transformation plan, which is to rejig the abattoirs in the state so that we can have hygienic spaces where we can get our meat. The government has also distributed inputs to farmers and is currently procuring more. So inputs is what we're talking about. Inputs is seeds, rice seeds, cassava stems, fertilizers, improved seeds for that matter. So you're talking about for 44 seeds that have a higher yield. So if they're used to, the farmers are used to cultivating seeds that give them about 1 to 2 metric tons per hectare yield, we're having Faro 44 seeds now that go up to 6 metric tons per hectare. Same thing as the cassava stems that are coming in, which is TM 419, that helps to increase yield, upwards to the level of 25 metric tons per hectare yield. So, and to add to that, the government is now doing what we call market linkages for our farmers. So we are seeing agriculture as a commercial venture now, not just as a social venture. Before now, people just go farm on one plot and they go to Eke market to sell. But now we are linking industries to farmers so that raw materials for our industries are produced locally. Take for instance, we have Tiger Foods that is based in Onitsha. There has been taking tons and tons of Nsuka pepper from our farmers in the villages. So at the farm gate, the farmers are paid at the farm gate, and their products are taken. And then the pepper is processed into spices in the part of the spices that we have in our kitchens. So these linkages are now helping farmers to have more income in their pocket. In addition to that, the government has registered more agricultural brands like the Enugu honey, Enugu okra, the suka pepper is a brand now registered with a trademark, Enugu Gari. So what's the idea? The idea now is to see how we standardize our production, our harvest, and process it, and is sold in a manner that encourages people to go back to farming, increase our output, and get to the point where we export.
All right, there seems to be just one concern there. It's about the tools that the farmers need to get the job done. I'm quite elated about the things you've mentioned happening, but the question is, how many of the local farmers have been carried along in this program, and do we also have the big machines they use in cultivating this expanse of land? Do we have tractors, let's say in every local government, available to farmers who are willing and able to go into farming, especially at this period? Yes. Is there a plan, or do we have it in place already?
Yes, we have tractors, and we have more tractors inserted in the budget. So the idea is you keep buying tractors and increasing the fleet of machinery in circulation within the state, and then to the point where you're sure that at least for every cluster, farming cluster, there could be a tractor that will come and service them, not just before farming but at harvest period, because tractorization is important both before farming, during farming, and at harvest. So that's ongoing. It's there in the budget. More tractors are to be purchased, and as a matter of fact, it doesn't end there, because you're also talking about equipment for processing. The governor bought the stoning machines and a few small rice mills, and shared to our rice farmers. So because the value chain of agriculture, as it is not just farming. You also have the people that process, and the people that market, and the people that package. So now what we have done is we have segmented the value chain, and we're delivering support according to the various people that work along the value chain. So not just tractors, but processing equipment. And then we also go on to now, in the budget we captured things for what we call packaging now, where we can now package products for the buyer. So when you go to Roban stores, for instance, you see all the products looking fanciful and all. These are farm products. So in a short time, you also see our products. And we also have a program for the youth.
Okay. All right. Just very quickly, I wanted to find out whether there is a comprehensive database for farmers, or I should say people that are really into the business of farming. Do you have a comprehensive database of such people?
Yes, we do.
In Enugu State?
Yes, we do. As a matter of fact, the COVID-19 also presented an opportunity for what we call a verification exercise. You understand? So you go to the farmer, you do a profiling. So we have the names, the phone numbers for those that have phones. We have the number of the family members. We have the size of land that they cultivate. We have an estimated yield for the farmers. So we have a comprehensive database of our farmers. All
right. We turn back now to the Commissioner for Budget and Planning, Dr. David Ogunta. We'd like to have a little bit of a sectoral run on the budget, because a lot of people talk about education and health and agriculture. Talk to us about a little bit of mentions of the sectoral areas of the budget, and how much that is assigned to each of them, and probably why such decisions are taken to assign such amounts.
Okay, thank you so much. Before I go to that, I also want to mention that in the area of agriculture, government is also interested. Government is looking at setting up a fertilizer plant in Enugu, so that we can support our farmers holistically, because when farmers get these inputs, they are able to increase their yield. Then there's more food to be consumed and all that. Now we have, coming to your question, we have basically about 5 sectors when you come to the budget. You talk about the administration, economic sector, law and justice, the social sector, and the regional sector. Okay, and you know, these sectors have their own subsectors. You talk when you come to economic, that's where you have agri, that's where you have the SME, that's where you have Ministry of Science and Technology, of which government is also thinking of establishing 2 hubs, ICT hubs in the state, you know, to increase capacity of youth in ICT, so that products of these can also be sold, you know, in the market. So so economic sector, you also have, that's where you also have works and infrastructure. And then you talk about the social sector, that's where you have the education sector, you have health, you have gender and all those. So but I can't begin to read out because these are details, you know, but I can tell you that in the original budget, the social sector had about, that is in the capital segment of the budget, because you know we have the recurrent and then we have the capital. In the original budget, the social sector has 16.04% of the total capital size of 100.7 billion naira. But in the revised budget, that increased. The percentage of what the social sector has increased to 20.34% out of the 76.58 billion naira of the total capital size. The economic sector also in the original budget has 65.68% of the total capital size of 100%, and in the revised budget it still maintains 64.02%, because the bulk of this economic sector is works and infrastructure, because that is where you know, you need to make investments, continuous investments for other things to thrive. And then the law and justice sector, of course, the law and justice sector has received a very huge boom in this administration. Talk about multi-door courthouses, talk about customary courts, you talk about employment of customary court judges and all that, you know. So they still have 1.02%, because a lot have been done in that area. Then administration sector, you know, where you have the legislature, the office of the governor, and all that, it dropped, you know, from 16.3% of the original budget and came down to 14.29% in the revised budget. So it's a holistic, I would say it is a holistic approach, because even the federal government came up with this CARES program, that is COVID-19 Action Recovery Economic Stimulus, which is like guiding every state in terms of, you know, let me say, approach is the COVID-19 consequences. And that cares, you're talking about human development, human empowerment, you're talking about agriculture, you're talking about health, you're talking about works and infrastructure, you're talking about education. So these areas, I would say, take priority in the revision of the budget. Okay.
All right, I just want to know again how the government intends to fund this revised budget, since we are seeing that there's a drop from the national, oil prices are dropping, and talk to us about how much that is available to the government and how much has been borrowed? By that I mean, talk us through Enugu State's debt profile.
Well, in terms of funding the budget is funded by, let me say, from three major angles. You talk about recurrent revenue, that is revenue that is expected to flow from the center down to the state. And then you also talk about IGR, which also belongs to that. And then you have aids and grants. And then you have deficit financing. That is where the debt now comes in. So when we say that the budget came down by 13.67%, what it simply means is that as revenue, you expect revenue to drop by same amount, and then you expect expenditure to drop by same amount. So it's not as if we maintain the revenue and increase expenditure. No, they were all dropped at the same time. So in preparing the budget, we now looked at things and current situations and realistically brought down our estimations, to say that yes, in the approved budget we were expecting about 51.2 billion naira from what we call statutory allocation, and then we brought it down in the revised budget to 32.6 billion. So that is a huge drop in that expectation. Okay, so government is in terms of IGR, government also dropped IGR, which we had at an estimate of 28.4 billion, and we brought it down to 18.5 billion. So all these things, as we are bringing down the revenue, we are also bringing down the expenditure. And then the federal government, having seen the scenario, that's what we call the SIFTAS program. It is like a grant coming through World Bank that has to deal with that's what we call disbursement link indicators. There are benchmarks that when you meet them, these benchmarks, there are certain grants that you get. And then the World Bank and the federal government also looked at that they need to support both the national government and both the states, and then increased the funding in this area, but now came up with newer DLIs that when states meet up with these, they can receive these grants and be able to fund their expenditure. Okay, and then whatever is left out of these will now be financed by debt. Of course, we are expecting that this budget will be financed by about 16 billion naira loan. Now, you see, budget is an estimation. Okay, the actual may vary at the end of the day, because we are estimating that yes, you spend so and so, or you get so and you get XYZ or so and so amount, and eventually you don't get it. So what do? You also need to look at your spending so that you'll be able to pull through and continue. So revenue trickles in. As they trickle in, you continue to fund those areas or those critical areas in the budget that you feel that will help stabilize the state, make it come out from the negative consequences of the pandemic, and then snowball into something better that everyone can now, stand on and move on with life.
All right. Okay, this is Political Voices on 92.5 Enugu's Dream FM. This morning we have the Commissioner for Budget and Planning, Enugu State, Dr. David Ogunta, as guest. And also on the program this morning is Engineer Mike Obuekwe, Special Advisor to the Governor of Enugu State on Agriculture. And you can be part of the program because we are live on 3 social media platforms. You can watch the video as we speak. Go to YouTube on our YouTube channel, Dream TV Enugu, and you will see what's going on here. And of course, you can watch us live on Facebook, 925 Dream FM, and on Twitter at Dream FM. You can send a WhatsApp message to 090200200925. You can call that number too, and you can also call 080988888925. Let's hear from you, listening to us and watching, what you think about the Enugu's 2020 revised budget. All right. Hello, good morning. Okay, nobody home. Hello, good morning. Okay, we can barely hear you. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. Turn down the volume on your radio, please.
Hello, good morning.
All right, good morning to you.
Yeah, this is Engineer Sylvester Doga, Abuji 06.
You're welcome.
I will want you to tell Engineer Mike that issue of cattle ranch they established, please let them not go back on it, because it will go a long way to reduce the tide of Fulani herdsmen invasion in our land. Please, that project should not die. No matter how the project is run down, please, they should try not to bring it down. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for calling us on that. And we have Dr. Chumukoba on the line. He is the chairman board of trustees, Amaka Chumukoba Foundation. He's also an economist. We will talk to him in a bit. And on Facebook, Omagan Namani is saying to us, good morning, my guest in the studio. Diversifying our economy is the best option for the country. Now, good morning to you, Dr. Chumukoba.
Good morning, Ellis. And good morning, the commissioner and the other guests in the studio.
Good morning, Doctor.
Yes, first I want to commend the Enugu State government for the revised budget and the transparency. I was shocked this morning when I went to the Enugu State website and was able to download the budget. But having said that, there are some issues I have with the budget, the previous year's budget and the current year budget. And that issue lies more on the credibility of the budget. When I speak of credibility, I speak on the basis of the government being able to stick to what has been budgeted in terms of revenue, meet the expectations in terms of budget, revenue and expenditure. In 2019, the state was able to meet their revenue expectations by over 94% or 95%. And but on the expenditure angle, the recurrent also was made by over 94%, whereas the capital was about 51%. But the credibility issue lies in the government working in line with the policy trust. First, as I'm looking at the approved budget, 2019 revised budget, I observed that most of the social and economic sectors, the budget performance were between 0.1% to 20%. And for sectors where the budgetary provisions were low, I observe also that the government overspent what was budgeted, in some cases by over 100%, in some cases by over 300% and all that. And evidently these things were not approved. Because in your budget, revised and approved budget, these figures were not there. And in the performance report that was given, no reasons or justifications were given for the state government overspending what was approved in the budget. And that raises a credibility issue. Now, on your 2020 budget, I've seen a lot of things. I've seen the policy trust, and I'm happy the government has budgeted so much for the social sectors and the economic sectors. But the key questions, the key issues I'm having is that if for the previous years the government has not had a budget performance above 30% on these sectors, what is the guarantee that in this year's budget that will happen? That is number one. Number two, I observe also on the SSG's budget line that a good sum of 5.5 billion naira was budgeted for the purchase of vehicles for the executive, legislature, and the judiciary. In this time that the state should be spending more on areas to boost the productivity of the state. and it keeps on there. And also observe also that in all the budgets, the capital budgets, I see repetition of items. Purchase of laptops, purchase of computers, purchase of all those things. I keep wondering, these things we also purchased last year. Why are we repeating this thing? Spending money on items that aren't in nature and bringing them into capital and keep spending them as though the state does not have things, areas that these funds will be spent. The governor's thing. I saw it, even though it's very minute, very insignificant, where we have a reputation of building of amateur or slaughterhouse at the government house. It was in the governor's line project and also repeated in the PID project, PIU project. So
right.
it's not that there's a lot of items, frivolities and reputations.
All right.
That the state needs to look at again.
Dr.
So we have those funds into more productive areas.
Dr. I'm sure we'll have to let the commissioner respond to the concerns he raised. Thank you so much. I think before we take some calls, I will let the commissioner respond to some of the concerns raised by Dr. Chunko Badaya from that call. Commissioner David Ubunta.
Yeah, Dr. Chuba, thank you for raising your concerns. Let me start with the issue of repetition. If you look at those line items he has mentioned, perhaps if you look critically, he may see them, but you may not see figures attached to them. Okay, that is one. Secondly, when you talk about budget is different from actual. That is at the end of the day. You may have a line item, like say computer, that a ministry thinks that they require to buy computer. And then maybe in that year, for instance in 2019, they were unable to purchase that computer. And then they still have a need for that computer. You don't expect them to knock it off. It has to be provided for. It has to be budgeted. So you now talk about whether the computers will be procured in 2020. And again, we operate what we call a multi-year budget, whereby there are items, maybe you feel you require, let me also still use the computer, you require, let's say 10 computers. You can decide to buy 4 in the first year. At the end of the day, it is what you have got that you begin to rationalize among competing demands to be sure that every sector is carried along. No budget is funded 100%. Okay? Then when he talked about the budget in the SSG, if you look at the approved budget for vehicles, the original budget was about 7 billion, but we had to bring it down to 5.5 billion. Okay? And when you talk about vehicles, you not just for legislature, not just for executive, but also for security vehicles and all this. So what we have done is to bring everything about vehicle for this government, every need of vehicle, and dump them under the office of the Secretary to State Government. If you go to the other MDAs, you won't see anything that has to do with purchase of a vehicle. Because we said, government took a policy and said vehicles has to be centrally purchased. Okay? So having 5 or even dropping it by 1.5 billion, because we had to take that into consideration and then brought down that provision. Okay? Then when you also talk about, he also talked of performance. This government is now trying to speed up performance, okay? Because at the end of the day, like I said, what you have budgeted is different from the actual at the end of the day. So your performance also matters. I agree with him. And government has looked into that, reviewed past performances, and government is committed to improve on performances. You know, because when you talk about performances, it's all about, you know, going into those critical areas where you have made provisions, and then you continue to you now strive to spend to make sure that you actualize those expectations. Okay, so we are hoping that by the end of 2020, our budget performance will definitely increase. Okay, because we are committed to every single thing in the budget. Government is committed to making sure that at the end of the day we get them done.
Okay.
Then in terms of the cattle ranch, nobody is talking about running down the cattle. That is an area that, in fact, the Commissioner for Agriculture should have been on this program with me, but he's busy with that. He has a marching order to make sure that cattle ranch is set up so that the concerns the earlier caller has raised will also be taken up. So I'm also happy that he commended the state government for, our budget is online. There's also what we attached to that budget, some of the documents we uploaded, which we call the explanatory notes, because today budgeting has changed. It's no longer you dump a document. No, people who are not there need to read along with you and understand. Just like when you pick up the accounts, the audited accounts of public limited liability companies, you see what they call the notes to the account. So today we now have explanatory notes that will take you through what we have done in the budget, and is also up there on the state government.
And to add to what the commissioner said about the cattle ranch.
Okay.
Well, I thank the caller for commending the government for that initiative. To throw more light on that, you see that cattle ranch, we are going to be developing our own indigenous cattle breed, including crossbreeding to increase the size and the the meat volume we can get from it. See that thing is not just a project; it's a transformation, because we now be creating a new generation of cattle rearers. People that had no jobs will now learn the skill. There's going to be technology transfer from that first mother ranch to other small holding branches across the state. Yes, he raised the concern about issues with regards to clashes. This is a solution to that, and it gives us puts more money in the pockets of the youth. It gives us more skill, and by the grace of God, we should be able to also become self-sufficient in meat in the state. So, like the commissioner has said, you are guaranteed. You have the guarantee that ranch will be ready, not in a couple of months, but as a matter of fact, in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
All right, just a quick look at our WhatsApp line. Wine Valentine Chijoke from Osaka is saying, is in the revised budget, is there any plan to recruit more workers in the state, because there are many unemployed youths in the state? And two, said, please, I want to know if Leja Road in the Soka local government is attracted in the revised budget by the government of Enugu State. It has been promising us that they will be constructed. All right, you're speaking for yourself, I see. Ugwai, let's take one call and see if we can talk it into the program. Hello, good morning. What's the name and location?
My name is Comrade Marcel. Good morning, Alice.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Good morning to all of you there. Now, I thank you what you have said about the budget. But unlike what Doctor said, I said this in one of the program you went to one of the stations in Enugu. So the third remains that most of us are confused in terms of this budgeting. Every year we keep on seeing the same. Does it mean those things budgeted for last year was not purchased, or what? Now, he made mention of the priority whereby government is taking care of for this particular time. Also reminding the government of Enugu State that Ada Rice in Adani is still there, is a shadow of itself. So I don't know why government don't want to invest in that particular farm settlement. That place, I believe, if government of Enugu State will also do something there, like they said, they are great problem for future generation in this side of the world. Please, please.
All right then. Thank you for a call, and I will just come back and wrap things up because we're run down the clock already. Dr. David Ogunta, in addition to responding to what he said about the cattle ranch, I'm sure you must have seen the ranch and you know what it looks like, so you can tell him what it looks like and what it's not like, because he's painting a picture in his head already. As we round up, as you explain that, we'll also get your final thoughts on the program.
Okay. Of course, we can't come at this time in nature, and we think of doing things the old way in terms of the cattle ranch. Of course, ranch has come into it. That shows that it's gonna be a modern way of doing things, not the usual way of that of the Fulanis, which has been causing a lot of problem. Okay. Now, I also want to say this, that there's a difference between actual and budget. Because people, most times misconstrue it. Once you see something in the budget, you expect it has been done. No, you can see something in the budget, it may eventually not be done. And then if there is need for it, you see it again in the budget. Okay, and there are certain line items because that you cannot continue. You can't continue to delete line items. So you have them. What you need to do is look at it. How much was budgeted last year? Okay, you can also make an inquiry. Go, were you able to buy this so XYZ? Why is it repeated? Okay, if you need it, how much did you actually buy? How much have you how many have you provided for in this year? So the issue of seeing the same item, I don't think it's a problem, because at the end of the day, you may have these things and it may not be done. I think it's as simple as that, so that we can understand it, so that we don't mix up issues. Okay, all right. So I want to say that the governor is passionate about Enugu State. He loves Enugu, and we do so much. He's ready to do so much for the state in terms of transformation, in terms of peace, in terms of everything you need to think of that can help the state, so that people, inhabitants in the state, can enjoy the state and also earn their living and be able to progress. All right, Engineer Michael Bwakwe, let's have your final thoughts. Just 30 seconds now.
Okay, what I can say is, for the other rice, work is going there right now. There is the partnership between the state government and the federal government under the program called ATAPSP, which is Agriculture Transformation Agenda Program, to revitalize the irrigation canals and fix some roads and the bridge within the other rice. So saying that it's not work, the place is not working, is not true, because we have over 3,000 farmers producing rice in other rice as we speak, and the rice, most of the rice we eat in Enugu comes from that place. So the next thing I have to say is to the youth. The governor is coming for you. We have the agri-business hub, which we're partnering with youth, with the NANS, Enugu State NANS chapter, and then the youthful people of Enugu State to provide job opportunities for them through agribusiness marketing, agribusiness packaging, agribusiness processing. All right. So by the grace of God, this year will end a very
thank you.
Year.
Thank you so much. Just to tell you, Dr. David Ogunta, I'm sure we'll be inviting you back to explain a few more things. Of course, the time would permit us to talk in a lot of the issues into this discussion. But very many thanks to you, Dr. David Ogunta, Commissioner for Budget and Planning in Enugu State. Thank you for coming on the program. And Engineer Mike Obokwe, Special Advisor to the Governor of Enugu State on Agriculture. Thank you for your insight on the program.
Thank you for having me.
And special thanks to Lotano Kereke, my production assistant, and my producer, Okeodogu. Coming up next at 10 is Dream FM's News at 10. My name is Alex Obodo. Good morning.
onye ọkwọ ụgbọala gịnị ka ị nwere ikwu?
Onye ọka iwu agwakwara nwaanyị ahụ oge m butere ya ahụrụ m na o yighị ihe mkpuchi iru. Enyere m ya otu mana nwaanyị a dị isi ike. O nweghị ihe na-agụ ya mana o kweghị eyi ya. Jụọ ọnụ ndị ọzọ nọ n'ụgbọala, ha ga-agbara m aka ebe.
Ọ bụ eziokwu bụ ihe onye ọkwọ ụgbọala kwuru?
Ọ bụghị ka o siri mee.
O nyere m ihe mkpuchi iru eji akwa akara wee dọọ. Ajụrụ m ya ma ọ bụ nke ọhụrụ ka o nyere m ya n'efu. Ọ sịrị na ọ